welcome to Inside Chats 04. It's great to have you all here, and this is our fourth event. And we are really happy to be back in the pitching part of this space. I'm pleased to have our co-host Artem here, and our next speaker Will. So we have actually really high expectations of this conversation with.
So you said.
So apparently, Will, besides he has 20 plus years of experience, he's also a part-time comedian. So we hope to get some good insights, but jokes as well.
Absolutely no pressure at all. Hopefully I'll deliver one or the other. We'll be fine.
So yeah, we are just going to start, and can we please ask you to give us a short intro to your rich history and
yes, well, of course, yeah. So, I actually studied law, but I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. I started an internet business in the kind of the dot-com boom, and without going into too many details about exactly the fortunes of that business, let's just say that I learned the importance of customer understanding the hard way. And so that steered me towards a career in the insight industry. I started as a quali, then I became a quanti, and then I became a sort of behaviourally insight type person, and then I moved into bigger agencies, and I was on the board of TNS, and then I also returned more to the boutique space, and now I'm in a very boutique space, running Insight Team, which is me, but also other consultants as needed according to the client's brief. Qual and quant, creative, collaborative, and available, so feel free to catch up afterwards.
It's a perfect name for SEO as well.
Yeah. Okay. So today we're going to hear your 10 hard truths, and before we start, can you say why did you decide just 10? And what's the reason behind that?
Well, first of all, you know very well that I didn't decide just 10, that I sneaked 11 into the deck that I've sent you. And I also, it was very nice of you to give me this platform to speak. I hope whether you guys agree, I don't know, we'll decide at the end. But I thought it was a great opportunity to discuss some of the themes that have frustrated me, excited me, and so on through a long career in insight. Sure has given me more grey hairs than I should have, even at my age. And so then I thought, well, a hard truths format is a good way of breaking it up and making sure that I don't ramble too much. But having written each of them on a PowerPoint slide, now I feel a little bit anxious about defending each of the, what are little more than assertions, or indeed opinions on each slide. So you may not agree with everything I say, and that's absolutely fine. That's enough really, isn't it? You get the idea.
We are going to start with the first one. Would you maybe, Artem, switch the seats with me? So I can move the slides. Also, here we have the first one.
First one.
If Artem, if you can repeat.
Of course, so trust the model at your own peril. Reagan was right.
There we go, Reagan was right, only about one particular thing. This idea essentially is, I don't know, it's going to touch on my second truth as well really, but let me focus on this bit. I think having worked in different agencies, there always is a kind of like, mostly, particularly quant, I think this really brings it out in people, but kind of, there's nothing wrong with a methodological focus and having the best possible methodology that you can, but almost, I've certainly felt the temptation as a researcher to, you almost feel like your stock in trade, your capability and your expertise lies in your ability to get your head around this particular method, to kind of, almost hero the outputs of the model. And I think one thing that I've learned over 20 years is that the tech, the model, the methodology can be really powerful and really useful, but you cannot lose sight of the fact, and it's vital for our clients that we don't lose sight of the fact that ultimately it's our expertise and our confidence sometimes to think, do you know, what's coming out of here really actually doesn't quite make sense. I really need to, if that's what I feel, perhaps I should look for something else here that can kind of go a little bit more in line with my judgment. And I think that's the thing, we should, although we rightly use tech and make the most of it, we should never abandon our judgment. And sometimes I've made the mistake of trusting the model, and then a bit too far down the line the client will say, well, why does this? We've put the biscuits into the ad more, so why has the brand linkage score gone down? And then a long email exchange with the people behind the model, and then it's like, oh well, we hadn't quite worked out that bit, so that bit just sort of drops out of the other sum that's going on. You're like, oh my God, what is this? So you find actually, trust your judgment, trust your instinct. You ask the right question, you'll find an area where the model could be even better than it currently is at the moment. And so we shouldn't overlook our skills as insight people, as humans, and as having judgment. That's really what that's about.
That's interesting. And I guess when you say Reagan, you mean...
Oh, sorry, yes, Ronald.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, yes,
Not
yes.
Nancy.
Yeah, no. Well, because he trust but verify, that's what he said. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with trusting a model, but, verifying as well your own instincts and your own judgment is just as important as having faith in the tech that you're working with.
So it came from his meetings with the Soviet Union. So, doверяй, но проверяй. Trust but verify.
Oh, very nice, yeah.
With that, at least, do you find that creating these models is often a marketing tactic for, be it the agency or the business?
Well, if it is a marketing tactic, I think the drive behind it is probably marketing at its best, which is to meet a consumer need. In this case, a consumer is a client or an organisation which needs a consistent way of giving them answers. And that would sound like a very politically correct term to take, but I do think that's right, and people want a consistent measurement framework. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the idea that we would create something, whether it's something client specific or even something which is proven to work. But it's just that if you're the person operating it, you still need to keep your wits about you.
Okay. I think that ends the first one. So the next one, Dogma will do for us.
Yes, so the Dogma will do, yes, it's exactly right. It is, rather than Dogma will do for us, I do mean it as Dogma will do for us, as in if we're too dogmatic, it will not work out well. And that really just, I guess this must happen in every walk of life. But I know when I was at TNS, some colleagues told me that once upon a time, many years before, two of the senior methodological gurus had an argument about the right coefficient that should be applied in weighting the outputs of a calculation, and in the end they went outside and had a punch up about it to try and resolve who was right.
That's
and I think that really sums up what I'm talking about here.
So one at the end.
Plus 3.5. That really sums up the kind of thing that I'm referring to here, is that as people working in the insight space, we have so much in common to be the championing the end consumer in organisations that, because they have so many priorities and so many pressures, can sometimes lose sight of that or find it challenging to always have that at the heart of everything in their business. So we have that in common between all of us, so that's what we're seeking to do. But nevertheless, I guess perhaps like in any professional field, often we can't resist that temptation to start drawing lines and saying, well, this way is the right way, and that way is completely wrong. Whereas the experience I've had working in boutiques, working in large agencies, is that there's some fantastic thinking in both, and that in fact you can, as we do at Inside Team, bring the best of both types of thinking together to produce something even better. So I think that if we are too dogmatic then it is and it it's good. It's good sort of TV, isn't it? To have sort of somebody like Byron Sharp going out in his very Byron Sharp style. Of course, speaking absolute sense. But I just don't think we need that adversarial stuff. I think we can all work together and find an even better solution.
Do you think that the analysts need to comply to the dogma of the research business, or that of the client or the agency?
Oh, well, yes. Well, no, but this is exactly it, isn't it? Is that for every dogma, there's another competing dogma. I think ultimately, so many truths, yes, even more than 10 perhaps.
Add 2 more.
But I think ultimately, well, yes, if you get too tied up in your own dogma, you're not necessarily answering the client brief. And in fact, we should be going beyond answering the client brief and challenging the client brief, because ultimately we're supposed to be championing the consumer and the customer and the stakeholder and whoever is ultimately going to be affected. So if we're stuck in our own dogmatic world, we're not even getting anywhere near that bit.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move to the third one.
Right, that third one. So for a people's business, we're very keen very keen to eliminate the people.
Yes, when I say eliminate, I do
How do you mean that?
Yeah, when I say eliminate, I mean, well, I
no.
do. Sometimes I have found in organisations that I've worked with that there's a tremendous drive to automate things, and there's nothing wrong with that, as anybody who has endlessly reformatted PowerPoint slides late into the night will agree. A good piece of automation can be very powerful and very appreciated. So not anti-automation in itself, but we can't lose sight of the fact that ultimately, in this business, we are a professional services business. We are helping people who are very hard pressed, very hard pressured, and the thought often used to occur to me, I'm not sure why it was earlier in my career, because it's just as relevant now, particularly when I was earlier, maybe I was an angrier young man, but the thought used to occur to me, it's like, look, if we're not doing the thinking, then who on earth is going to do it? Because they're rushing about, they've got several projects on the go, I mean so have we, but still, we're actually supposed to be providing insight here, so we need to think, and we can't just necessarily do that by spitting out a number. And generally my experience has been that if you're not pragmatic about that, if you're not pragmatic about the fact that you need the human element, you can often end up more inefficient than you were before, because at some point somebody's going to say, a human, your client, is going to say to you, sorry, can you explain this thing that's come out of the machine? So you can either build in that explanation, I don't know, by say giving them a debrief, or not build it in, but then you're going to find yourself trying to do it some other way, while you're on a train and the signal's cutting out or something, ultimately we are people working with people, and I do think that we need to keep our eyes on that, as well as making the tech better and better, so we can do that better. I don't want to come across as a Luddite. Good Lord, no.
So you don't think so that AI will answer the questions instead of our customers?
Yeah, well, that's a good one, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I think AI has a role to play. I mean, certainly, one of the things that saddened me when a few years ago I was responsible for putting out into the world some of the AI components of methodologies, was clients weren't really interested at all, and we would say, like, look at this great case study, we geofence this area, we can see exactly what people are saying, how they're feeling. I mean, I might as well have been speaking to them in a language that they didn't understand, and of course now everybody has a huge appetite for it, so yeah, it's a great thing, but again, I mean, we're still going to have a role in that. I think we'd have to help get the best answers and apply that in the best way to solve that problem.
But now that AI is in vogue, do you see an arms race coming for analysts? Of course, the notion is, if you're using an AI assistant, think GitHub Copilot, you can be 10 times more productive, right? So your output can increase. Do you see that there's going to be an arms race between analysts?
Well, I mean, hopefully we'll become more productive. I mean, there's so much that some of the debriefs I've been involved in recently in consulting that I've been doing, huge value in that. Could AI have helped get to some of the answers that I've seen us giving to clients? Yeah, perhaps it could. Algorithms to identify how best to make comms most emotional, algorithms to look at how can you dial up the interaction between the human beings in the ad, stuff like that. Yes, AI could make suggestions, but I think there still needs to be some human input to make sense of those profusion of suggestions and help narrow down to a decision. So it might mean we can do more quickly, do stuff that is, most of the research projects I've seen, even now, still involve a massive amount of faffing. So if AI can help cut out the faffing and enable us to actually add the value that we all like to, then I think there's power in that. That's a technical term, faffing.
That's a great term.
Oh, okay, so we had the fourth one.
This is I opened a fortune cookie earlier and it said Francis Fukuyama syndrome is contagious in the C-suite. So what I mean by this is you may remember, and I have to confess I have not read the great man's book, but Francis Fukuyama, of course, was the professor who proclaimed in his book that it was the end of history, and this was the book written around 1990. So basically the historical tension of ideas and ideologies had come to an end and the world had pretty much just decided that liberal democracy was the way to proceed. And it seems to me that desire, albeit he had a huge amount of analysis to go with his conclusion, but it seems to me that we can all suffer a little bit from Francis Fukuyama syndrome. Anybody who's ever produced a presentation or had it saved on their C drive where it says, blah, 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 file name, and then final, and then version 25. There's always that, just like, yeah, we have done it, this is it is fine. No, hang on, I've just got a few tweaks actually, and oh no, I need to change your tweaks back because I don't like them, etc., etc. And this refers again to some of the automation that I've seen, which is, whenever I've been consulted and the teams I've been leading have been consulted, we have absolutely enthusiastically played ball with the people who have said, let's automate parts of the process that you're doing. Welcomed it because of the reduction of faffing. But what we've always said is, can we make it automated but modular? That's the buzzword, because clients have perfectly reasonable questions around wanting something customised because their business seems to be asked a particular way, or maybe, we as a company think that 7 particular metrics are important, but, the client agrees that 5 of ours are important, but also likes 4 of their own. Well, that's okay, isn't it? So all we need is a button we can press so that those can go in. But no, they've gone and locked it down because they sat in a meeting late at night and were like, no, we've solved the research survey. It only needs these 7 questions, so that's what's going in there. So then, of course, the poor souls who have got to try and meet the client's requirements, they then need to make a small adaptation. It requires epic manual workaround to actually try and just bolt this simple thing on that is a perfectly reasonable request. Or shall we go back to the global corporation and say, yeah, I'm sorry, we just can't add that question? I beg your pardon, I thought you were market research. No, we can't do it. I'm afraid our survey's actually better than what you're thinking of, and we're afraid we can't do it. And so if the goal was efficiency, it's now wildly inefficient because we're trying to tack this thing on to something that's a closed loop. And it's a psychological problem. What is the problem with saying, okay, I don't mind if you think my questions are rubbish, but can you just leave the possibility that I might be allowed to ask my client them at some time? That's really what it's about. And so I don't blame the great man Fukuyama, but I just feel, I see a parallel in that kind of, yeah, I've solved it, this is the end of everything.
Okay, so this one is quite passionate for you.
Yeah, no, I don't have any strong views about it one way or the other, really.
Does it as we are going to progress to truth, is the passion going up or down?
No, don't worry. This is I've done it as like an arc, so we'll be really chilled by the end. It's okay. By 8, I'll be screaming. The windows will be bursting. No, it's all right. Mind you, what is that? Sorry, you're going to ask me about that
No,
one.
that's fine.
So you have a 6-1?
So for people
fifth one,
business,
sorry.
Yeah, this is, well, this, I feel like this,
you have better drivers.
yeah, so I mean this one, I obviously, like sitting up here, three guys, I wondered about whether I should even have written this particular slide, but I do think that we all have we have a duty to consider exactly how diverse we are being, both in terms of how we conceive of consumers. I mean, I was dealing with some difficult conversations with a client recently where they didn't like some of the respondents because one or two of them, like I had a couple of female respondents who were saying that they chose an important purchase with their partner. And then they were like, well, we don't believe they're the decision maker then. And it's like, look, you know, we need to realise how things work in the real world here. You know, people make decisions jointly. So, you know, it's not just about kind of what we might immediately think we think of diversity. We of all people, we need to understand what it's really like out there and help clients to make sure that they're reflecting that reality. And it applies, of course it applies to who you hire. Where I found it to be particularly personal, it also applies to who you fire. I've been in organisations where they may have had a very diverse mix of people, but I found some of the decisions about who to let go when times got tough to be fairly inexplicable, and I sometimes felt, well, you know, why has this happened? You know, here is a person who's brought in a lot of sales, but they're maybe not fitting into the main club here in some way, and I think that's the kind of thing that we have to be very vigilant to. Yeah.
Do you have a proposed solution?
Don't have a proposed solution.
In
Well, I think we all need
tactics,
to do better, and to be honest, and this is exactly the challenge I gave myself when I wrote this on the slide, because I was thinking that even at the moment, what could I be doing as somebody who's principally operating on my own, but also bringing other people on board, what could I be doing to make sure that I'm already making a contribution? Because I think that's the reality, isn't it, is that we're each going to be making decisions every day. How can we make those decisions where we move things in a better direction? So no, I don't have a simple answer, to be honest. But I just don't think any of us should be complacent. That's my main point.
Okay. You should keep your friends close, but I know there is one more, but casual acquaintances is closer.
Yes, and your casual acquaintances close.
What does that
could easily be. Let me get my wine. This could easily
So
be.
you need wine for this one? Let me drink as well.
What I mean by this is actually, I don't know if you probably have, well, or you'll be familiar with the archetype anyway, of, you know, people talk about when they retire, you know, suddenly the phone stops ringing, you know, they've spent their whole life working in this career and, you know, they've accrued a certain amount of status or position, and they retire, suddenly that all stops, you know, because nobody wants them to sign off a purchase order or whatever it is, you know, nobody gets in touch, and then they're like, oh, what the hell am I doing? And it's a difficult step in life for everybody, and for some people it's extremely difficult. So if you want to simulate that effect earlier in your life, then you could just try going freelance, because you'll get a taste of it very quickly. And one of the things, and the reason why I highlight this is because somebody else said it to me, and I thought, my goodness me, you're right. So I caught up with somebody who is somebody I don't know particularly well, but I had a meeting once, they were the client, I was the agency, blah blah, and I just sort of, you know, going through, as you do, LinkedIn, let's have a coffee. So I had a coffee, and, you know, he said, well, I've got a good feeling about us potentially working together, he said, because, you know, when you go off on your own, you always think it's going to be the people that you got on fantastically with or had the great relationships with that you'll be working with, but actually no, they never return your calls. It's the people that you just sort of brushed past or had a bit of some kind of interaction with who you end up working with. And it's just an amazing, truism, I don't know, you'll judge if it's true, but it seems it's a fascinating thing. So it just shows, the value of keeping our eyes and ears open, and events like this, because this is where
So
we get to.
Am I the guy from the story? Or
It's
Okay.
this is exactly it's so valuable, both for our sense of self, our sense of togetherness as inside people, and also potentially for our future contacts of financial well-being, to have events like this. And I do find we were having this conversation a few weeks ago when I first started frightening Marion by telling him some of the truths I was thinking of including. And you can have those most amazing client relationships. We won't have time for the full anecdote now, but it's pretty damning, isn't it? But I think the best work that I ever did was a project in 2007 for a dairy client, and the reason was because nobody else in the room seemed to be able to solve the problem, and I made a suggestion which required the research to work and suggest testing something, and thankfully it did work. But I put it on the line, and I had faith in the thing, and it worked, and it was brilliant. And recently, the client that I work with there, I've tried to get in touch with, now that we're both somewhere else, and blah blah, no response. So it's just the way it works. It's just the way it goes. So yeah, keep your eyes open and build as many relationships, casual acquaintances as you can.
So build a network. That's the advice.
Yeah.
Okay. Timesheets lie,
This is a bit
they
aggressive.
do,
Yeah.
but still you cling to them.
Yeah, this is a little bit aggressive, so
Poetish.
apologies if any of you are pro timesheets. But this really comes back to, and I probably, this is an unfashionable view, but I find the kind of mindset that where somebody says, if I can't measure this, I can't manage it. I find that mindset to be a abrogation of responsibility, because ultimately, the reason why senior people get paid the big bucks, supposedly, is because of their judgment and their ability to make great decisions. So, I mean, how does that? I'm a great decision maker, but on the other hand, if I can't measure it, I can't manage it. You can't have it both ways. And a timesheet to me is a classic example where I've seen decisions made in organisations based on what the timesheets are saying. Departments heroed for turning around a profitability situation where clearly there's been some kind of diktat to just fill in 8 hours and no more, no matter how long it's taking. And all you have to do, admittedly, it's harder in today's world where we're working from home, but it used to be dead easy, because all you'd have to do is walk out of your office. I mean, in our industry, a lot of people are in open plan offices, so you could just look up from your laptop, really, and see who's in here. If you're in late, are there lots of people in here? You could even walk around and ask them what they're doing. But if you did that, you might find out things like they're endlessly reformatting the graphs that have come out of the automated charter. And actually, because it might highlight a management failing, which is that you've told everybody that you fixed this automated solution, but in fact you're in the foothills, and these poor souls are working into the night to try and get the flipping axes aligned and labelled correctly. So it's easier to just rely on this data and make decisions. And I just find it doesn't build your faith in people as decision makers and managers if they are flagrantly relying on data which, if they had an ounce of common sense, they would know is flawed, and so on and so forth.
Is there a happy middle? Because are you fully against Peter Drucker?
I don't want to pick a fight with Peter Drucker. Look, and the thing is, it's part of a balanced approach, isn't it? Yes, you don't, as we know, especially these days, you don't just rely on one data source, right? So who is going to go making decisions about, who's performing department-wise or individuals based just on timesheets? You have to understand what they're doing. What tools have we given them? Are the tools actually fit for purpose to enable them to be productive? we have to actually engage with that, because we'll get a lot faster feedback. We'll find that the problems are solved in months instead of years, which is what often happens. The same problem still not properly solved because we didn't look into it properly. So yeah, they're part of it, but they can't be just used as, oh, this is my sole data set on who's doing what and how it's going.
So Will, you are trying to say to us that you don't have a spreadsheet with hours per your client?
Well, I hold it in my head.
Okay.
A mental Excel. Oh, here we are. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Never trust your successors. Yeah, I think this is. Sorry.
More wine for this?
Yeah. No, look. I mean, this is about. And I just to step outside the inside world for a moment. You do see this in every walk of life, where, with the very best of intentions, something is done. So, for example, 10, 15 years ago, they introduced these indefinite, sorry to become so serious suddenly, but this is something that I feel quite strongly about. They introduced these indefinite prison sentences for people that they said were a threat to society. So, instead of being put away for 3 years and knowing you'd come out of jail in 3 years, you were put away indefinitely. But it was okay, because you'd be constantly monitored, and every year you'd have a hearing and the psychologists would feed in and there would be a decision made about whether or not you would then be let out of jail. Of course, what actually happened was that if on the day that your hearing was due, they were short-staffed on the floor of the prison, there might not be a prison officer to bring you up to your hearing. So then the hearing would drop out and you'd have to wait another year in jail, waiting to have a hearing. This would happen over and over again. So there's been hundreds, thousands of people in jail indefinitely because what was said to be this watertight plan. Of course, we'd never just lock them up without properly reviewing it. Yeah, but you're not going to be around, are you? You know, you're going to be doing something else. Something else will be happening. Things won't happen. And this is what's happened. And I've seen in arguably, well, obviously less important. It's not the deprivation of people's liberty. I've seen the same things happen in the corporate world. So I remember one organisation I worked in, they had somebody very good-natured, and presumably a good-natured executive board, had decided to increase the levels at the lower level of the organisation so that people in junior roles could get progressed more often. So we'd have a sense of progress and they would get a pay rise, albeit smaller, step by step, but they would actually get a pay rise sooner perhaps than they would otherwise done, and have therefore move up at a time where obviously every pound counts because you're on a low salary. Well, that was great until a couple of years down the line, where everybody's forgotten that that's why we did this, and then when the quarters figures are looking a bit tight or the years looking a bit tight, then they freeze all the salaries. So what you end up with is people frozen at a level below what they would normally have been at if there had been the normal structure in place and they would have had a full promotion. Then you have a situation where somebody, as happened in my team, somebody left. And then given what they had been offered somewhere else, and they were definitely worth it, I proposed to my boss that we should advance this person 2 steps up. And I got the response on email, no, I don't think we can seriously do that. As if that was the most absurd suggestion in the world. Or alternatively, what it would have been without these steps, a normal promotion. So, just an example of how if you're ever thinking of, and it usually is probably like almost overthinking for all the right reasons to correct a challenge or a structural problem, remember that you probably, with your passion for solving it, unfortunately won't be around to administer it in future. So you need to make sure it's future-proof, and you need therefore to allow for both human and organisational frailty in that. So probably better to just keep it simple.
Tricky process to manage.
It is. Well, I'm not saying I always got it right either,
Yeah, the double promotion, that's hard to explain to...
Well, it's 2 halves, though. 2 halves.
Precedent.
2 halves. 2 half promotions.
Yes.
That was going to be my argument.
Interesting. I thought you were going to go down a completely different road there. Is that don't
more promising.
Don't trust your juniors.
Certainly not.
Okay, so this is the ninth one.
Yeah, I'm really getting into it now. The 8th P of marketing research is perpetual restructuring.
Is this again about the charts and restructuring the charts?
No, don't worry, it's not chart for you. Sorry, I've got post-traumatic stress disorder from too much reformatting PowerPoint charts. Clearly, thank you for being my support group. No, what I was going to say here is, look, okay, organisations occasionally do need a restructure, don't they? And you need to make sure you've got the right people in the right place. And all right, okay, somebody's really not performing yet. Maybe it is better for them and for the organisation and so on. However, it ties into the dogma point. I do find that there is nothing that businesses these days like better than going straight to structure as the issue, far in preference to addressing any of the other 7 Ps of marketing that may or may not be affecting their performance. And very often, in a sense, if you were to restructure but also be pragmatic, it would be much less of a problem than if you did it in a very dogmatic way. But these things are usually accompanied by statements like, well, you may not like change, but you'll prefer that to irrelevance. Or, there's only one thing that's certain, it's change. And then you say like, well, this person likes doing both A and B, so could they potentially have a dual role with a bit of A and a bit of B? No, because that wouldn't be enough change. It's like, well, no, but sorry, I was talking about how we could keep the business coming in and keep serving our clients. No, that won't be enough change, because that's the most important thing. The other thing is, well, that's fine, and what happens then is you say, oh, this year we're going to change from being focused on client sectors, and we're going to change into a focus on specialist practice areas in terms of types of research. Nothing wrong with that. But of course, this pendulum swings in any agency I've ever been in on a 2 or 3 year cycle. So, we go to practice area structure, but then we decide after 3 years, everybody's forgotten why we did it, and then we say, oh, we should focus on the clients because they're the most important thing. And 3 years later, we'll decide to do it the other way because you should be more strength in the practice area side of things and the specifics of comms or innovation. These switches would be much better handled if we still had some of the people that were comfortable operating in both spaces. But unfortunately, we literally told them to go because we said, if you're not up for this change, that's absolutely fine. You can leave. In fact, we'd like you to. And so if you'd had the Will Goodhand model, which is, well, Jeff, Violet, Florence and Keith, they all want to do a bit of innovation and a bit of comms, even though we split them, well, they'd be perfectly positioned for when we decide to switch it back and focus it on clients, because they'd be like, great, you can service GSK, they've got a comms and innovation business, great, fantastic. But we can't, because unfortunately those people have left because we asked them to.
Why do you think agencies do that? Do they just love living in chaos every year or so?
What a very good question. Yes. Well, the irony is it's the quest for certainty, isn't it? I bring you back to Francis Fukuyama. I, random executive, have finally cracked how to structure a research agency. Really? Because everybody else keeps having another go at it every now and again. No, I've cracked it, and now I'm going to drive it through like a steamroller. What about everything else? If we're not performing as a business, is our pricing right? Is our offer right? Are we even in the right sort of strategic area? There are all these questions, but actually, no, that's less important to address those than it is to just have a period of change and disruption. So I think, ironically, it's the quest for certainty that then begets more certainty than you can possibly have. That's the trouble. Everybody in this world, except all of us enlightened people in this room, wants more certainty than it's possible to have. That's the thing. You can't have certainty. We are on a rock, hurtling through space, and not everything is certain. It can't be certain. So we just have to be a little bit comfortable with some things being a bit uncertain. And certainly one person's idea of certainty is not right. And just to finish this, by the way, we ended up in one organisation I work with where the marketing team consisted of about one person doing half a week, and a full-on transformation team consisting of between 4 and 6 people. I mean, you know, like, I rest my case.
And we have...
Oh, the ones that make us feel good, that's right, yes. So, what I thought I'd do, I finished with 2, there's actually 11, if anybody was counting. I thought I'd finish with 2 that can make us feel good, just in case I've ranted and raved like a lunatic too much. When it's right, it's really right. This is why we should feel great about what we do, because when we produce work that really answers a client's brief, it can be absolutely transformative in all the right ways. We know that. We can have a massive impact. We can cut through the turf wars in the corporation and the, you know, people trying to cut all the cost out of something and, you know, other people trying to do something good. We can indicate where the value really lies in terms of what consumers value. We can make what we produce fit, as in, I mean, the clients we work with, we can make what they produce or the service they provide be so much better because it fits with what people actually want. We can actually help to improve people's lives on a day-to-day basis because of the insights that we provide. That is what we can do. You know, great data. Great data. I did a project once where we got consumers to tell us what effect it had on their purchase intention, different discounts versus buy one get one frees and this kind of thing. And for me, again, this was back in 2007. I don't know what happened that year, but what a year. It was incredible because it turned out that what consumers told us about the impact on their purchase intention fitted exactly with the amount of margin that the retailer or the company was surrendering with each promotion. So, you know, 50p off was that much more motivating than, you know, an extra 25 millilitres, and so on and so forth. But then they also told us, which was honest of them, we actually got to the honesty, that when it got to buy one get one free, but it didn't have this much effect, which is what it should do versus the 50p off. Bang, it had that much effect in terms of how likely they were to buy the thing. So it absolutely, the consumers even told us exactly how susceptible they were, irrationally, to what was being put in front of them. What a fantastic piece of data. What a lucky client. No, I didn't even do all the work on that, but what a lucky client to get, you know, to get data like this that really actually helps you understand what's going on and what pulls at people's wallet strings in this case, you know, and that's what fantastic research can do at its best. So it brings us on to the last one.
I really like your visualization of charts with the
yeah. No, I was thinking of putting the actual
didn't
chart, wasn't I? We're actually ahead of time, aren't we? I should slow down. But that we should be more confident, because this was something actually that many of you have met in Richard Ingleton, who was running TNS and then running Kantar, did a fantastic strategic piece around how the gulf in confidence between consultancies where he'd come from versus the insights industry, where actually consultancies would often, with much less data than we have, be way more confident about what they were proposing and charge much greater margins. It was 10 years ago that he put this together, but I think it's as true now as it's ever been, which is we should be really confident of what we can do at our best if we are not being dogmatic, if we are being collaborative, if we are using our data models, but we're also being prepared to be sceptical and questioning of them in the name of our client's brief as appropriate. If we're not driving the business by timesheets and being obsessed with perpetual change in who's sitting where and what the organogram looks like, if we get all of these things right, then we can be absolutely fantastic. We can be unrivaled because we're equipping people to make better decisions. We're making those decisions evidence-led, but we're also having it grounded in the reality of people's lives, the people that we listen to, people that we do research with. We have an unrivaled ability to be able to do all of those things. So ultimately, when it's right, it is so right, and we can make it right almost all the time. So we should be even more confident than we are at the moment in our industry and in ourselves as inside professionals.
Brilliant. Okay. So that was a quite strong strong ending. last two. Yeah, I admire your sales skills. At the end, you are.
No, but you were planning to get a word in edgeways, weren't you? One or two of those. So yeah, go for it.
Oh yeah. So it was great to hear the 11 hard truths. So not 10.
It's true.
11.
Inflation.
But
I'm
as
afraid.
the night
10%
goes,
inflation.
you are going to increase them. Maybe. Like,
10%
I don't
value.
know.
okay, so we can now have some questions. So if someone would like to ask anything Will about his hard truths or anything else, now would be the right time. Okay, so we have Sarah all the back in there.
So I heard your opinions on AI and technology and kind of how it's going. Obviously, having the mindset through the human interaction is always going to be the key and not replace it. But I do feel in the insights industry, it seems that there's some people or in some positions of like in research specifically that fear that AI and ChatGPT, amongst other things, could in turn at some point replace what they want to do. So how would you address that?
Well, we really do. I mean, I do think that it comes. I said a lot of things, but I think it comes back to one of those things that I said about how we are the people. Look, if anybody's doing the thinking, it needs to be us, right? And not just thinking unaided, but thinking with the benefit of the consumer voice as well. So if anybody needs to be doing that, it is us. And actually, through my career, I found that I haven't been able to do that as much as I would have liked to do, or as much as a client would want me to do, because I've been stuck with project admin. I'm not going to blame timesheets now, although I did used to find it tedious to fill them in. But project admin, fiddle-faddling with slides that aren't working properly, automated outputs that fall over, riddled with errors, that kind of thing. All those things, certainly as a research exec, took up almost all of my time. So that actually then providing the conclusions and the thinking, or having the opportunity perhaps to talk to more senior colleagues and get their input, were done, maybe at the end of the day as they were leaving. I'd be like, well, I'll just have to stop now. I'm just retweaking slide 35, but we'll just stop because I can see he's going out the door. So have a chat then and get some input. So I do think that if AI really can, and we don't just get caught up trying to press the right buttons and ask it the right questions, and that takes the place of formatting the charts. If we really can use it effectively, and it can do what is being suggested and make people more productive, well, fantastic, because then we can actually deliver what we all came here for anyway, which is to, we may not all be client-facing, but I'm sure we all want to be delivering an efficient process that delivers the goods. So if it helps to do that and then enables the delivery of quality in visualization, if it's the data visualization, or in the client recommendations as I would be doing, then I don't think we should be too afraid of it. But what we should do is we do need to make sure then that we exercise that muscle. We do need to be in a position where if it comes to us and they do say, what do you think we should do, that we are actually ready with an answer. And I'll be honest, there's one or two times in my life where I've been focused on other things or whatever, and I'm just I have looked at the charts before presenting them, but this would never happen under the Insight team brand, but in previous roles, and my answer would be inadequate if they asked, what do you think we should do? Well, that's unacceptable. The professional pride should prevent us doing, being in that position, but we do need to make sure that we always are there. We must have an answer. And it's all right, every 1 in 10 projects, it's all right if the answer is more research needed, as my boss famously wrote on a slide once as the conclusion. I was like, that's bold.
More research, right?
Yeah. Will that research have a conclusion, or will the conclusion to that also be more research needed? You can use your get out of jail free card once every now and again, but you can't have a deck of get out of jail free cards. You're going to have to actually answer the challenge. So we need to practice that. So even while the AI is imperfect, and even while the auto charter's still spewing out rubbish every now and again, we still need to be practicing having a perspective and a quality perspective, and talking to colleagues. And then that is that little bit harder now, of course, in the world we now work in. But then again, maybe there are things. I used to hate Teams, but now I love Teams. I mean Microsoft Teams, as opposed to having to be in one. Because of the flexibility to go from a call into a chat, but it's all still there and everybody's still there. This seems to be working so nicely. So I think there are some workarounds that now exist which can maybe give us a bit of that and mean that you can get other people's perspectives. Because if there's anybody who thinks it's weak to ask for other people's ideas, definitely not. I mean, I do that all the time, and it always helps. And not always just to confirm my own ideas. You get new ideas too, and new perspectives. So I think that is the other side of people things. None of us knows it all, do we? And whether you're the one standing up in front of the client or not, getting the input of others can be so powerful in that.
Absolutely. I think to build on Sonrab's questions, naturally with the advent of generative AI, it's a new tool. Many other tools came along the way. Where do you see it playing a role? Who should be responsible within a team structure to actually drive that into the process? And is it a must-have, or is that a nice-to-have?
Well, I guess it's increasingly going to become a must-have, isn't it? But I mean, it has a role for everybody, because I mean, if you're a salesperson, even at the most basic level now, we have that ability to say, I am a researcher and I'm about to have a meeting with a client in this industry. Can you suggest some talking points that may be on their mind at the moment? That kind of thing. So I mean, that's a use already at the moment that a salesperson could have. But equally, I think in terms of solving the coming up with new concepts, ideation process, improving an advert based on it's resonating mediocrely at the moment, but we have certain algorithms around or understanding of what actually gets people excited. Obviously the usual ones, put a dog in it, put a baby in it, but there may not. You could do that, but then if everybody's doing that, what else should we do? So the AI, I think, can be very helpful with that, because it may actually come up with something. As we know, we can all become a bit too stuck in something, can't we? And it can be a very fast way to iterate and come up with different perspectives. So I don't think that there needs to be the kind of the AI person that we have to go to and ask them to operate the,
prompt engineer.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
prompt engineers.
Yeah. I think it's something that has value for all of us, whichever bit we're doing in the thing.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. So, what do you think it could be dangers, for example, for new professionals coming into the market that obviously don't have 20 years of experience, 30 years of experience, and then they rely too much on this artificial intelligence, and then what happens is that they actually don't have the expertise to actually say, oh no, wait, this is not right, what you're saying, and instead of just thinking that AI can give them the solution to everything, but forgetting that AI most of the time is built on previous data, right? So it's not so great now for forecasting things. So what do you think is the danger for the new professional coming into the market without having experience and relying too much on these tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always that danger, isn't there? I mean, I remember writing a debrief where I misspelt because I'd only ever heard the expression skew. I didn't know how it was spelled, but just decided that I would decide how it was spelled. So I just wrote through the whole debrief, the cheddar cheese skew, and spelled it SKEW rather than SKU. And I almost asked the client, because they had sent a deck, and it said, the Pareto rules applies here. And I was kind of like, pair 2, what's that? And I almost like contacted them to say, look, sorry, is this pair 2 rule? Is that something that you use in your organisation? You know, but something stopped me, and I was like, nah, hang on a minute, this sounds like something I should know what it is. So I googled it. Yeah, you know, there's a extra confidence versus capability. Wherever we've been at any point in history, we're all, you know, in danger of falling the wrong side of that, I think. And it can easily happen as well, like, 20 years experience, I know the answer to this one, you know. It can easily go the other way. Like, there's no reason why what I say should necessarily be right, because I might be stuck with, much like the example you were given of the AI working on historical examples, what if I'm working on historical examples? So we all have to be, I think we all have to be aware. But to your point, new people, if that's the most useful thing to teach new people coming in, isn't it? It's kind of like, keep your eyes and ears open, you know, listen to people with more experience, but also question it. Sometimes you might have to suck it up. They say, like, no, we've got to do it this way. But that's fine, but you be entitled to form your own opinion further down the line about whether they were actually right or not. I mean, that was I had the privilege of working with some people who were 20 years older than me in my first job, and yes, they worked us through the night repeatedly and made us do all the work, but it did get to see them in action. But it meant sometimes I'd be in a meeting and I'd be like, I haven't asked the client this. Oh, I must be wrong about, you know, we should ask them that. And then we'd get right to the end of the project, and then you'd find that somebody would say, why didn't we do this? And I'd be like, oh, I should have asked that question. So, but I was lucky to be able to see that these people, just because they had 20 years experience, didn't necessarily have it right, because then I could grow my own confidence in making the judgment. So wherever possible, I think we need to build that capacity in people. You know, hopefully, on the whole, this industry attracts curious people who are curious about people who are curious about data and interested in different data sources and so on. But let's try and obviously nurture that, and, you know, to some of my earlier themes, not steamroller it.
Amazing. Okay, I think we are good. We reached the capacity of our chat.
Cognitive. Basically, everybody's suffering cognitive overload.
Okay, so can I ask you just a round of applause for our So thank you, Will. I think that this was a great chat. Yeah, thank you for that. Right now, we're just going to have a short chat from Vic about MRBA. Really nice charity in our industry. So Vic is just going to share a couple of words, and maybe we can leave the space so that we has some space for the slides. So we can just so the arrow should have, yes.
Okay guys, I'm going to take just a few minutes of your time. Okay, so just a quick show of hands. How many of you have been in the market research industry for more than 2 years? Oh good, a number of you, alright. And prior to today, how many of you have heard of the MRBA? Just one. Yeah? Oh, two, okay good, awesome. So look, the MRBA, the Market Research Benevolent Association, I'm an ambassador for them as well as a director at Picator, and the charity has been around for 40 years, so since 1977. It's independent, and it's basically supported by people within the market research industry, and we're here to support market researchers like yourself, so it's a very unique charity. And it's also generously funded by other market research firms, or we run sort of donation campaigns and auctions and things like that, and those funds are then distributed to those in need. So essentially what we do, we provide financial assistance and relief to those who might need it. So look, in this day and age, we have the cost of living crisis, bloody interest rates going through the roof. You know, you might come in a situation where there's some personal injury, or you have some illness, or you know, God forbid you lose your job, and there's a situation where, okay, how am I going to pay for food, or how am I going to pay for my mortgage, etc. We are here to help you, right? And it's not just you; it could even be someone who is within your immediate family as well. So. If you ever have any such situation and you've been working in the market research industry for more than 2 years, then you can reach out to us. Now, the whole process is basically anonymous, so it's very confidential. So you just basically, on the website, you know, apply as such, and then one of the sort of caseworkers reaches out to you and assesses your claim, basically. And we can help you with things like food, it could be mortgage payment, it could be, you know, we've had a situation with, you know, a woman couldn't pay for her husband's funeral, and it was quite a tragic time, and so we were able to cover that. Sometimes it's a couple £100, sometimes it's a couple of £1,000, you know. But it's important to remember the assistance we give is not there to like cover your mortgage like for a whole 2-3 years, you know, but it's just to help you to get out of a pickle at a moment in time. And luckily we have that within our industry, so I just wanted you to know about it because people just don't know, you know, so you should know about it, and please tell any of your industry colleagues, if you know of any of them that are having a tough time, that we are here to support. And you can ask me, you know me, right? I'm Vic, so come to me if you've got any questions at all as well. And also one other interesting thing that we do, we have the MRBA skills. So we actually run this with the MRS. So basically, if you're looking to upskill, learn some new market research skills, we can actually pay towards your qualification effectively, which is like a grant. So if you want to further your career, you know, get to that CEO job or whatever it is you want to do, let us know and we can basically give you some money towards that. Yeah? And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So thank you so much. We are the MRBA, and there's some information about us. Yeah. All right. If you have any questions afterwards, I'm around here. Okay?
Feel free to stay for drinks, we have more, so yeah.